Hi, hello, welcome. Can I, interest you in some voodoo? No, not the you come get the voodoo kind of voodoo. I'm talking about VuhDo, the click to heal add-on, which you definitely should go and get if you don't have it already. If you do have it installed, then I bet you're here because you've tried playing around with it and you just couldn't figure it out. Well, don't panic, that's what I'm here for. It might look intimidating, but it's actually quite simple to set up once you get the hang of it. For those who are new to the add-on, or even to healing in WoW, what is a click to heal add-on? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's an add-on that lets you click on a player frame to heal them. For example, right-clicking will cast Penance on a player, while left-clicking will allow me to cast Shadow Mend. Shift, Control, and Alt modifiers can be used as well, so, for example, if I shift and right-click, I can dispel my ally with Purify. These are just some of the keybinds I use, of course. You can set the add-on up however you prefer. You don't need an add-on like VuhDo to be a good healer, but it's very useful and gives you the same or similar advantages that healing with mouse over macros offers, while being infinitely less complex to set up and maintain. It also ensures your main keybinds, like 1 through 7, are free so that you can switch to DPSing in your downtime if you so choose. Before we set up the add-on, I want to lead with a bit of a disclaimer. I'm not a healing pro. I don't push Mythic rating or Mythic Plus dungeons. Instead, I'm pushing middle age and live with chronic pain thanks to losing the genetic lottery. I also have to work with ADHD. As you can imagine, that means my reaction time isn't always great or even good. If you're like me, don't worry, all is not lost. I've been using VuhDo to heal since Wrath of the Lich King, and it's made healing not only possible for me, but fun too. If you're not like me, you'll probably get more out of using this add-on than I could ever hope to. Once you have the basic knowledge of how the add-on works, you can take and build upon that information to make profiles that really suit your playstyle. Now, let's get into the game and set this add-on up from the very beginning. This is Ellipses, one of my resto druids. Since she already has VuhDo set up on her, the first thing we're going to do is reset the add-on to start from the beginning. If you've installed VuhDo and you haven't changed any of the settings, you don't need to do this, but if you have tried to figure it out and couldn't, you'll want to reset everything before you try changing any more settings. We're going to go to the minimap icon and left-click it. Then we'll head to the Tools tab, and then the Reset tab on the right-hand side. Under All, click Everything. You'll get this warning, and you'll want to hit Yes. There we go, it's been reset to factory settings. This is what your VuhDo should look like too. It has 3 parts, and it's kind of a confusing mess. We have the buff watch, the private tanks and NPCs, and then the party frames, which are showing right now as Group 1. The first step is going to be to clean this mess up. I don't find the buff watch or the private tanks and NPCs to be particularly useful, even in a raid setting, so we're going to remove them. We'll go to the VuhDo icon again, and right-click it. Then we'll go down to Show Buff Watch and uncheck it. Next, we'll left-click on the icon to pull up the menu, and then we'll head over to the Move tab at the bottom. As you can see, it pops up the option to remove panels, so we're going to click on these X's to remove both the private tanks and the NPCs. Then hit OK. Now we're left with Group 1. In a dungeon party, you will see 5 of these panels, one for each person in the group. During the intro of the video, I showed you a clip of me healing a dungeon on my Discipline Priest. The panels were much bigger there and cleaner. We're going to recreate that right now, but remember, you don't have to make things exactly the same as I do. You can adjust the sizing to what looks good and works well for you. In fact, I used the default frames for most of the years that I've been healing. They're small, compact, and they don't clutter up the screen. But I'm getting older and I like things that are a bit easier to see, so I've been playing around with the larger frames and I do enjoy them. As to placement, that's very much a personal preference. My husband puts his VuhDo frames on the left side of his screen, but a lot of people like to keep them below the character, approximately where my weak auras are. I've always put mine on the right-hand side, close enough to the middle of the screen that I can still keep an eye out for mechanics while I'm healing. Before we do any sizing, it's best to get an idea of what the default panels will look like when you're in a group. So the first thing we're going to do is test them. We'll left-click on the icon again, and make sure that we are on the Move tab. Select a party of 5, and then hold down the Test button. This is what a party of 5 will look like with this layout. Let's head over to the Panels tab. Before we commit to a vertical party of 5, let's see how a horizontal party of 5 looks. Check the horizontal box right here, and you can see what that looks like. I prefer my frames to be vertical, so I'm going to change mine back to that. While we're here under the Panels tab, I'll choose 4 for the max columns. This will keep my panels from going off the screen when I'm in a raid group. We can test what that looks like by going to the Move tab. We'll click a group of 40 and hold down the Test button. As you can see, in a 40-man raid, these panels are doable. That isn't so true of the default frames that I use for dungeoning. But fear not, you can create profiles and load them at will under Tools. For example, here are what my large group frames look like. These are useful for raids and battlegrounds because they don't take up your entire screen. Let's talk about the pet panels. Most healers remove them entirely because they have no intention of healing pets, and if that's what you would like to do, go for it. I like to have pet panels because sometimes a pet needs healing to prevent a wipe, and I like having the option to heal them. That said, if you do choose to show pet panels, there is no reason why they should be as large of a frame as your party frames. Under the Move tab, we'll see the pet panel there. Go ahead and click the X to remove it. If you don't want pet panels, skip this next part, but if you do want a pet panel to show, click on Add. A new panel pops up. We'll click on the green plus sign and then click Choose. Under Type, we will select Special, and under Value, we will select Pets. Hit OK. Now we have a separate set of panels for pets. These can be resized and edited exactly the same way as the main panels are. All you have to do is make sure that you have the correct set of panels selected before you do your adjustments. Let's head back to the Panels tab. There are a lot of options here you may or may not want to tweak. You first means that your frame will always be on top. As you can see, I tend to use this. I've tried other layouts, but I prefer to be the first person in the group for no reason other than I like it. From the Sort By drop-down, you can choose any order you prefer. The most popular layout is probably Tank, Healer, DPS. Now let's work on tweaking the look of our panels. On the right-hand side, click on Headers. Uncheck the Show box to remove those. If you like seeing the headers, just leave the box checked. Next, let's head to the Sizing tab on the right side. This is where you get to start changing the look of your bars. If you don't want the dark border around the panels, you can shift the X and Y gap to achieve that. And of course, you can adjust the panel size directly by changing the bar height and width. I'm going to change mine to 156 by 50. Once you've picked your desired height and width, head to the Bars tab on the right-hand side. Under Bar Texture, you'll select your poison for the visual of the bar. There are a lot of options, but I prefer Minimalist. Under this tab, you can also change the mana bar height. You can get rid of it by changing it to 0, but I like to see it so that I know how everyone is doing. If you want to see other resources, for example Rage, Runic Power, Energy, or Focus, then you could go to the General tab, click on Indicators, and under the Mana Bar section, select the drop-down and choose All Resources. Now when you go to the Move tab and hold down the Test button, you can see Rage, Energy, Focus, etc. If you'd like to hide the panels at any point, for example while solo, you can type /hide VuhDo, and if you want to bring them back, you can type /show VuhDo. Alternatively, you can right-click on the minimap icon and select those from the drop-down. You can also go to the General tab, and the General info on the right-hand side, and select Hide Panels while solo. There is a small bug with VuhDo when exiting a group. The panels tend to just disappear. All you have to do to fix this is just click on the minimap icon to get it to show. Next, we'll head to Text under the Panels tab. This is where you can adjust the text to suit your needs. I'll show you how to set things up the way I like, but please feel free to play around with these settings if there's anything about them that you do not like. Clicking on the text box under bar text lets you change the color. I tend to go for white, with an outline and no shadow. Font size, for me, is usually 16 for the name and 10 for the health. I click the bottom button here to show the health percentage beneath the name, but it's not uncommon for healers to uncheck the show button because you will know if anyone is missing any health. One of the most important things VuhDo does, besides letting us click to heal, is give us the ability to show what HOTS, or healing over time effects, are on our teammates. Click on the Hot Icons tab, and we'll get that set up. When you're new to VuhDo, I fully suggest selecting one of these two pre-made layouts. The numbered boxes are showing you where the icons for your healing spells will appear on the panel. For example, if I select this first layout here, and decide I want Rejuvenation to show up where 3 is, then I simply go to slot 3, choose Rejuvenation, and when I use Rejuvenation on myself, you can see that on the panel I have this healing effect on me, right where the 3 is. I personally prefer the second layout, so that's what I'm going to pick. And this is the order I usually choose for my druid spells. It just makes sense to me, but something different might make sense to you. Some classes don't have many HOTS to track, so be sure to choose to put them where they are easily noticeable to you. You don't want Earth Shield to expire and forget to reapply it, and you don't want to cast Riptide on the same target 3 times in a row because you don't notice that they already have Riptide on them. If you want your hot icons to be bigger, you can slide the bar down here to make them more visible. Finally, we've made it to the fun part. This is where we set up our actual healing spells. If you've never used a Click to Heal add-on, this will probably take a little getting used to, but it will be worth it. We're going to go to the Spells tab at the bottom. This section has 3 parts: modifier keys, mouse wheel, and mouse buttons. Under mouse keys, the left button means left click, and the right button means right click. By default, Rejuvenation is set to right click, so if I right click on anyone in my party, I cast Rejuvenation on them. If I change the modifier key to Shift, and make sure that Nature's Cure is typed here, then when I hold Shift and right click on a party member, I will dispel them. This logic holds for the scroll wheel too. Capitalization doesn't matter here, but spelling does. You can also type in spell IDs if you like. This is how I set up my druids. When I scroll up over a panel, I want to use Cenarian Ward. When I scroll down, I want to cast Life Bloom. When I left click, I cast Regrowth. And when I right click, Rejuve. Shift left click is Swift Mend for me. Shift right click is Nature's Cure. I also set Control left and right click to Iron Bark. Hit OK when you are done. I can see that the effects are up and who they are up on, as well as when they are about to expire. But wait, there's just one more thing. You may notice, if you are playing a druid, that instead of a roll icon right here, you have a big red dot. The big red dot is a druid-specific part of VuhDo. Its presence means that you can use Swift Mend on the target. This might be useful to new druid healers, but Swift Mendable simply means they have a hot on them, and since VuhDo already shows that to me, I don't need another reminder. As you probably saw in my intro gameplay clip, I prefer to always see roll icons. To adjust this, we'll left-click on the Minimap button and go to the General tab. On the right-hand side, we'll find the Indicators section and click on it. Then we'll go to the Special Dot tab. Under the drop-down, select Roll Icons, or None if you don't want to see anything. If you would like to change the sizing of this, you can click on More, and just scale it down a little bit. Hit OK when you're done. I don't usually need to move away from the basic healing buttons I've just showed you, but recently I leveled a Holy Paladin in a Light of the Martyr type build, and started playing around with using other keybinds to add to my toolkit, since Paladins have so many castable abilities. Here's Neva, my Paladin. The spells I'll use as an example are E and Q. I usually strafe with a combination of the right mouse key and the movement keys. So I don't tend to hit E and Q. I decided that I would use Q for Beacon of Light and E for Light of the Martyr. I was looking for an easy, spammable key for Martyr specifically. If you want to set up a key like that, you can go to your menu, which by default is hitting Escape, select Key Bindings. Go to the Others tab. Here are where VuhDo keybinds are listed. If your MMO mouse has its keys mapped to specific buttons, for example mine are bound to the F keys like F1, F2, F3, etc., then you could bind those here. As you can see, I've bound E and Q. To set up healing in VuhDo itself, you'll left-click the map icon and go to the Spell tab on the bottom. And then Keys Global. Type in the spell that matches the keybind number you selected just a moment ago. Now, when I press E over a player frame, or when I mouse over them out in the wild, I will use Light of the Martyr on them. The problem on this server is finding an alliance. Oh, they have PvP enabled. And I'm just tapping E while I'm moused over them. Back to ellipses. Let's left click on the VuhDo icon and go to the Spells tab and then down to Miscellaneous. Smart Cast is really handy when it comes to Resurrection. If you click on a dead party member's frame, it will automatically cast Resurrect if you have one. If you're in combat and you have a battle res available, it will cast that for you. The Cleanse will auto-dispel a target if they have a dispellable debuff and you are out of combat. I highly suggest disabling this. There is nothing worse than running to the next mob, wanting to cast Renew or Penance or Holy Shock on a target, and instead of doing that, you spend a global dispelling them. Worse, you might be standing up from drinking to heal someone who is about to die, and instead of casting a heal on them, you dispel because you weren't in combat but they were. Remember, you want control of when something is dispelled. I thought I would add a short section to talk about a few little tips and tricks to make healing easier and more effective. When a target can be dispelled, their panel frames will change color to indicate this. If more than one person has something dispellable on them, try to dispel the person who needs it the most. For example, mages can decurse, so if you have a curse on the paladin tank and a curse on the mage at the same time, your priority should be to decurse the tank. Nameplates are super useful to see abilities being cast, so consider playing with them on if you don't already. As a healer, it's nice to know what kinds of damage to expect in the next few seconds. If you're a shaman, maybe you can interrupt some of the damage to mitigate it. For everyone else, you may decide to blow a cooldown just to deal with that damage. Speaking of cooldowns, don't hold them the entire dungeon waiting for the biggest emergency ever. Chances are, if you look back at the dungeon, you'll see places where you could have used cooldowns more often to make your life easier. This is just as true of Ironbark and Guardian Angel as it is Healing Tide Totem and Tranquility. Whether the cooldown is 1 minute or 5, don't sit on it the entire dungeon waiting for things to go completely sour. What usually ends up happening is that by the time the damage gets unmanageable, your cooldowns aren't enough to save the group. Use them early and use them often, as they say. Use non-healing cooldowns liberally, too. Sprinkle a little capacitor totem into a group of mobs. Help your team root slimes on Plaguefall's first boss. Use Blessing of Freedom to prevent yourself getting slowed. Damage is going to hit you, Astral Shift. A lot of mobs casting right around you, Leg Sweep. Damage that's never taken in the first place is the best kind. Knowing the fights is another good way to become a better healer. Being able to predict damage or other problems, unavoidable or not, can go a long way in how you play and how good your reaction time is. This takes practice, but the more you do it, the better you'll get. Track tank and/or party resources. I don't mean that you have to track them with VuhDo, though you certainly can. I use 2 add-ons to do this. Omni CD to track my party cooldowns, and Weak Auras to track resources for specific tanks. In this clip, you can see I'm tracking a Brewmaster's stagger. The higher the number goes, the more damage the tank will be taking. Being able to visually see this helps me juggle my cooldowns appropriately and know when he might be in danger. And here is a weak aura I use to track the runic power of my Death Knight tanks. If a Death Knight has no runic power, he can't do any self-healing, which means he's relying on me. If he has low health and a lot of runic power, he's not in as much danger because he has the power to self-heal. Declutter your UI. Sometimes this means getting rid of things you don't need to see, for example, party frames. VuhDo shows your entire party. You don't need to see it again on the left side of your screen, so consider disabling it. For things like your chat, details, and quest tracker add-ons, consider changing the opacity of the background. Sure, dark looks cool, but you can't see through it very well, and the more you can see, the better off you are. If you use an add-on for your action bars, and you have a bar that you don't need to see regularly, for example your bags, consider setting it up to appear on hover instead of all the time. This sounds controversial, but clutter your UI, or rather add things to it that will assist your healing. You can always change your mind about something you've added later. I use weak auras to track not only my major cooldowns, but buff durations and procs. For example, Sunfire and Moonfire glow when they're about to expire. Blessing of the Seasons tells me what blessing is up next, and when it's off cooldown. Cloudburst shows me how much healing is stored, and Hammer of Wrath pops in to tell me that it's castable. Sometimes these little things make a world of difference. Even when you're not healing, consider using VuhDo if you can dispel, misdirect, or heal. When I'm tanking, I like to be able to see everyone's health and the healer's mana at a glance. If someone gets cursed while I'm on my mage, I can decurse them. If I'm on my feral druid and the healer is struggling, I can toss my predator swiftness proc onto someone to assist. VuhDo makes it easier to assist the party no matter what your role is. Even though healers are expected to do a little DPS in their downtime, do not get so caught up in the DPS groove that you forget to heal, and especially don't forget to heal yourself. If you die, no healing is happening at all. Lastly, my final tip. You can only ever do your best. Sometimes your best will be kind of bad, especially at first if you're not used to healing. That's okay. Tell your group that you're newer to the role, and hopefully they will accommodate you. If they refuse to, that's a them problem. Try testing out healing in random battlegrounds, particularly epic ones where dying doesn't matter and small mistakes won't hurt anybody too much. When you're comfortable with your keybinds, try a normal dungeon. Work your way up from there as your confidence grows. Don't be afraid to communicate with your group. Hey, this boss is hard for me to heal. Please try to use a cooldown if you have one. In my experience, most players are willing to assist if they can. Sometimes a warlock will put down their soul well or hand out health stones, and the paladin keeps an eye out to use their selfless healer procs on injured party members to take some of the pressure off of you. The hunter has their pet taunt tenderized to protect the tank when their health is low and necrotic wake. The rogue might work a little harder to lock down a caster mob that hits too hard. Communication is key in any group setting. Yes, you will get bad groups. If you tried your best, then you did all that you could. If you have any questions about VuhDo, feel free to leave a comment below and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Happy healing, everyone!